Hi, welcome to another video of GeoSpinach. Today with us, we have a new format on the channel where we're going to be discussing geopolitical analysis on current events. So this is going to be an opinion piece, and I'm going to having various guest here to have discussions with them. Here with me, I have Anthony Haralambos, currently in the UK. He's a law graduate, specialization in tax, and he also works in international, what do you call it?
I'm actually currently in Geneva working at the International Law Commission. I'm assisting the member from Cyprus. So it's a UN body where we get various topics from the Sixth Committee of the United Nations, and cool. This drafting of reports that go back to the Sixth Committee for approval.
Great. So the general concept of this discussion is going to be about Russia and Ukraine and about the Russo-Ukrainian war. It's going to be two videos. The first one will analyze Russia and Russia's endgame, and that will apply in covering the current coup, what's happening with Putin, how is Russia looking to finish up the war, and the next video is going to be about Ukraine. The next video, we're going to cover the first things again, but in a much shortened time span. And let's get directly into the video.
Yeah, so I think it'd be good if we start with some core definitions. I think many people with various different backgrounds, including myself, might not be familiar with what endgame is in particular. Can you describe it a little bit more?
So yes, endgame in geopolitics implies that, like any other game, when you are playing a game in this world, in the geopolitical sphere, you have to have a goal, a long-term end goal. That implies both in warfare and in geopolitics. So to give you a context, the end game goal of NATO in regards to modern-day Russia was to weaken Russia as much as possible. And that will imply making Ukraine a gray zone. In that sense, for example, the NATO has massively succeeded in that goal. Ukraine now is not an ally of Russia, and especially is not even part of its zone of influence. It had made Ukraine a gray zone, and now it's pushing it further. So that's the general definition of an endgame, having a goal to your targets, a realistic one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that's a very good definition. So if we go back to Russia and back to Putin, you mentioned that one of the endgame results here is for Russia to lose power. I think Putin is part of the Russian power. Has he been losing power?
So just to make it clear, I will argue that Putin right now is a dead man walking. And the main reason he's a dead man walking is because Putin now is not the Vosges. The Vosges is a very important concept in Russian history. The fact that whomever is a leader of Russia, he's always the strong man, the guy that controls everything, and everyone fears him. At the same time, he provides everyone with positions and power. So you are the Vosges when you control some specific aspects of Russian society. And one of the most important one of those is the military and the media.
Mm-hmm. So would you say that President Putin is not the most influential sphere?
No, not. Unfortunately for Russia, and I will argue why that is an unfortunate event, something that the West unfortunately has not understood what is happening. The Wagner's group, the coup d'etat that happened, and the fact that the whole southern Russian army completely refused to fight the Wagner group, and the Putin came to its rescue, the northern army rescued Putin. It was the first time in my life that I've seen RT News actually having unbiased opinions, which is something that never happens. That comes to show that even RT, the media outlet that Putin created to personally manage his propaganda, had abandoned him. City after city stopped supporting Putin, up to 200 kilometers from Moscow. So they started from Rostov-on-Don, that is 1,100 kilometers away from Ukraine. So let me show you, for example, my screen. So can you see the screen?
Not
Yes.
at the moment.
Give it a
I
second.
mean, if you can, okay, I can see it now. Yes.
Oh yeah. So they started from here. So you see what I'm drawing?
Mm-hmm.
And they had to move up here. So a bit closer. But yes, the concept is that to reach Moscow, which is quite far away. I'm losing it a bit here. Yes. The map for some reason doesn't show it. Yes, Moscow here. To reach Moscow from Rostov-on-Don is 1,100 kilometers. And they managed to reach up to 200 kilometers from Moscow. So we're talking in an area around here, and I don't remember exactly where. And they stopped their offensive. And then it got announced that there was a deal behind closed doors. Now, what does that deal imply for Putin? A strong man, a leader of the Soviet Union, a leader from the Tsars, if anyone will have opposed him, that means a death sentence to him. Mm-hmm. There's never a single man staying alive. And now Prigozhin, the leader of the Wagner Group, not only did get a deal not to dissolve the Wagner Group, but the Wagner Group moved to Belarus. He got exiled to Belarus, and then a week later, we've seen him flying to St. Petersburg, which is here in the north. And then again, we've seen him flying over here in Yekaterinburg. So the leader of the Wagner Group is literally taunting Putin, is showing off and practically saying to Putin and Putin supporters, Putin is not the voice anymore. He doesn't have the power to stop me. I did a whole coup against him. The whole Southern Army didn't resist, and it's gone. So I will argue that Putin is a dead man in the sense that he doesn't have much time in power, and eventually he will lose. So,
I mean, my question is, I hope something I can engage the audience as well is, what a few weeks have passed since the coup, the attempted coup. Can any assumptions be made at what that closed door deal was?
I don't know specifically about the closed door deal, but I will expect that Putin will most likely lose power within the next 1 or 2 years, except if he takes some really radical steps. If he does take some really radical steps to reestablish his power, and that will imply some sort of a victory in Ukraine, and that's very important for him. If he can achieve some sort of something that he can brand as victory in Ukraine, then probably he can maintain his power. If he doesn't, and here comes the concept of the endgame, the ones that get to power are not the liberals. They think that the West can understand about Russia, and their complete lack of understanding of Russia history, which is my specialty, is that Putin, the dictator that the West has branded, I'm not saying he's not a dictator, he is a dictator, but Putin in Russian politics is the moderate. Putin is not the aggressor, is not the vast aggressor that the West think he is, comparably.
So if there was a change of government, let's say within the next year, as you're suggesting, who would you believe the alternative leaders or the president of the Russian state would be?
So we can't really know specifically the name. We know, though, the political ideology. And the political ideology will be the ultranationalist. And honestly, that's what I'm more afraid of. The ultranationalists of Russia, for the past year, are calling for mass mobilization. They are chanting Groznoye Army. So they want the Red Army to come back again. Mass mobilization, recreate the great Russian army. And you have to understand in warfare, as the audience know from my videos, it doesn't matter if you have a specialized trained army from the West. 300,000 soldiers against 5 million, They don't stand a chance. That's the reality of the war. The 5 million will receive tremendous casualties because of the low skill of their quality and so forth. Nonetheless, Russia will win such a war. And what I mean by win is not literally conquering the whole of Ukraine, but pushing Ukraine to such a brink of destruction that it will be forced on unfavorable peace terms. Now, Putin has not called a mass mobilization yet, because that is generally unpopular to the most moderate part of the Russian populace. And what Putin wants is an end to the war. He was pushing for that end of the war from the beginning. And once the stalemate had begun, after the failed Russian offensive we've seen and the gain of territory of Ukraine, Russia has turned completely on the defensive, and it's literally restructuring its army from the beginning. It's applying the strategies they already knew how to apply, which is deep defensive systems. And currently, with the Ukrainian counteroffensive not working at all, we are expecting this war to go forever.
Okay, so my question is now, you said that Russia went back to its roots of being a defensive player in warfare.
For the foreseeable future, prior to launching a massive attack. So you need to be ready to launch such a massive attack with a lot of infantry, which is of a bad quality.
So, I mean, my knowledge of the Ukrainian-Russian war at the moment is probably very limited to yours, especially. So my question would be, President Putin has made some statements to international allies. When I say allies, I mean the West, such as there'll be repercussions and etc. Are those just scare-mongering tactics?
Of course they are. What Putin wants, I will assume that Putin didn't expect the West to react so radically against Russia. And that was a failure on his part, not to expect the West acting so aggressively. The West did act as aggressively as it did, and it did cause quite a lot of economic damage to Russia. So long-term sense, Russia is gone. So as an economist, I will argue that because I am an economist, Russia, it's a dead power, at least for the next 10 to 20 years. Its economy has stagnated. It has decreased the quality of the standard of living, so continue decreasing. And the more the people fall into this desperation, they seek a person to blame. Now, Putin is one of those people to blame, but the most important person they are blaming, and this is a message to the West, is the West. The Russian populace in the early 90s admired the West, believing that they could turn their country around and become something similar to a Western democracy. What we've managed to create and give to those Russian ultranationalists is a populace fanatized by anti-Western rhetoric, which has been proven by the Western actions. And this will inevitably lead to the rise of the ultranationalists, which we have seen by the coup of the Wagner group with no resistance. On that note, I want to talk about how Putin will try to stay in power and the concept of Endgame and how Putin wants to end the war. So I will argue first.
Yeah, I was just.
I lost you there for a minute, Anthony.
No, sorry. I was just saying you could go ahead and describe President Putin's endgame. I think it's very interesting.
So my main argument in regards to Putin endgame is very simple. Putin is a dead man walking. If he doesn't take radical action, he's lost. Now, we've seen in Russian history from the past, like since Catherine the Great, Russia can portray anything as a victory. Even the Russo-Finnish war, which they lost, like really badly, they managed to portray it as a victory. So Russia this winter has proclaimed both Donbas and Crimea as independent, as territories of Russia practically. but it didn't declare the whole of eastern Ukraine as territory of Russia that it's seeking to claim. Now, in the initial stages of the war, we've seen from the Kremlin, their greater goal was the complete capture of all eastern Ukraine, as for Russia to use the Dnieper River as a defensive position, and a change of government in Ukraine. Since then, Putin has become so desperate that due to the limited counteroffensive they had conducted, the dug in of defensive positions, and the proclamation of only 2 regions as territory of Russia, in my opinion, in a geopolitical approach, they are practically asking Ukraine, they are giving them an opportunity for a deal. And we've seen that with the acceptance of the grain deal and so forth. All of these are geopolitical games. So they are giving Ukraine, like, take it, like, accept the deal. I want out of this war. And I will agree on putting this is the only option out for them. And let me share my screen on this. So in this sense, what Putin is practically saying to Ukraine is, give me this and I'll recognize this, okay? Recognize these 2 territories. I'm giving you everything else back and stay neutral. This is probably the deal that is currently on the table, okay? And
yes, but I mean, if there is, from a spectator's perspective, me being the spectator, that seems, I mean, it's probably not the best deal for Ukraine because obviously they're going to be losing land, but at the same time, it seems like a win-win situation. So why is this deal not being kind of on the table?
We're going to talk about specifically about Ukraine's end goal in the latter part, the next video, and we're going to dive that into detail from the Ukrainian perspective. Firstly, I want to cover the Russian perspective. So this deal that I'm portraying here is the minimalist deal of Russia, and this is what the West has to understand. This deal is barely acceptable by the vast majority of the Russian populace. The vast majority of the Russian populace, if we ignore the ultra-extremists that wants the whole of Ukraine, so for example, there was, in 2018, there was a whole, they asked the people a survey, like what they wanted. And like 83% of the population believed, would have liked the Russian Empire to recreate itself. That implies getting the whole of the Baltic states, Finland, Armenia, Georgia, parts of Poland. We're talking about the Russian populace being very expansionist in nature. So the ultranationalist end deal looks something like this, as something very minimalistic. Like all of this territory, like the bare minimum. Like this is what the ultranationalists are willing to accept. Now Putin, and this is the message I'm sending to the West, is willing to negotiate for something much, much less. The question is whether Ukraine has something to gain more or a better deal than this. This is the whole juice of the question. Can Ukraine get something more? And this is what we're going to discuss on the next video, which is going to be specifically about Ukraine. And before we close the video, I just want to make this clear. I'm not pro-Russian at all. As a Cypriot, personally, me and Anthony, and we truly understand the perspective of the Ukrainians. And I think Anthony, you truly agree with this.
I mean, yeah, it's not long ago. I think, how many days was it? 3 days ago, where we were reminded of the Turkish invasion of our little island. 49 years have passed, but still very fresh in our memories. So yes, we are very close to the Ukrainian nation. As
we are coming both from a country that has suffered a malicious invasion from Turkey, which is not different from the invasion of Russia to Ukraine today. And the message we want to send to Ukraine is not a message of hopefulness, of dreaminess, the delusions that unfortunately had blinded the Cypriot people, but the message of realism. In Cyprus, and we're going to talk about this in the next video, there is no end game that does not include Turkey inside. Either we like it or not, that's simply the reality of the situation. And we're going to talk about this in the next video specifically. So stay tuned in, and thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.
Thank you for having me on the call. Thank you, everyone. See you later. Bye.